In the first part, I will ask you some personal questions. First, I'd like to ask about your job. What do you do?
I am currently working as an IT consultant for Ontario Health in the Pathway Communication Company. And Ontario Health is our project. So basically, my job is to help doctors when they are using our software and they have any queries. I need to give on the spot solution to them.
Do you like your job?
Yes, I quite enjoying doing my job because I already had an experience of doing the same job back in my country, and fortunately, I got the same kind of job here, and I had good opportunities to enhance my skills. So I
Thank
like
you.
this.
What job do you think you will have by the next 10 years?
Definitely, I want to pursue my career for the development side, or like as in software development, creating websites. So I definitely wanted to go for the larger companies.
Mhm. Now let's move on and talk about fashion. Do you follow fashion?
Yes, I follow fashion. I like to be in following trend, and like I try myself to keep up to date according to what's going on in the market.
Mhm. How has the clothing fashion changed in the recent years?
I feel it's been changed a lot since past, and different type of varieties are coming, but like they're all. I feel like mostly they are trying to just more. Um, they are mostly trying to just change the older fashions into the different versions of the new fashion. So
Thank
like
you.
they are okay.
Now let's talk about hobbies. Do you have any hobbies?
Yes, I quite enjoying doing gym. I mostly regular. I'm going gym regular basis, like 5 days in a week.
Mhm. Is it harmful to spend too much time on a hobby?
That actually depends on the hobby. Like, let's suppose uh, if you enjoy watching Netflix, and if you are spending your most of the time watching the Netflix movie, then I feel like it's not a good for individual's health. But if you are enjoying your hobbies, like in a like doing a gym or reading or enhancing your skills, I feel like it's something like you are extending yourself and
Thank you.
improving yourself.
Now we can move on to the second part of the exam.
Mm.
In the second part, Pooja, I will give you a card with a topic and you should talk about this topic for 2 minutes. Before that, you have 1 minute to think about the topic and make notes. Okay? You should describe a person who wears clothes that you think are unusual. Now you have 1 minute to think about this topic and make notes. And your 1 minute time starts now. All right, now your 1 minute is over, and you may talk about the topic for 2 minutes. Your 2 minute time starts now.
So today I would like to talk about a person who is my friend Zil. She is a social worker and doing social activities on a smaller scale. So recently we had a meeting and she came up with an idea about developing a website to raise a fund for helping people in Palestine. So actually I felt, and her plan was trying to gather as many as people involved in it. So according to me, if and she was wearing at that time was like a pretty casual clothes and was a little bit appealing. So I feel like she is a social worker, she should wear the appropriate clothes. According to me, she should be wearing like an formal clothes, so that represents that she is running a campaign and she is spreading a message about what she is doing. So like let's suppose if a person is wearing like fancy clothes and campaigning about something to raise fund, I feel people won't be believing in it. So I gave her an advice that she should dress properly according to the event, because if she needs to gather a support from people, first she needs to be present herself very positively and according to the event, and that's how we can manage the activity. And after that, actually we had a small event where I followed the instruction and she wore the casual clothes, and hopefully we raised a good amount of money. And yes, I would say another thing
Thank you
like,
very much. Now your time is over. In the second part, Pooja, you talked about a person who wears clothes that you think are unusual. And now in the third part, I would like to ask you some questions related to this topic.
okay.
What do people consider when buying clothes?
Okay, so when people are trying to buy the clothes, they need to check the price, then their size, and they need if they are buying it for a specific events, then they need to consider the factors that they particular clothes are not appropriate for some events, so they shouldn't go for that. So like let's suppose I'm talking about myself, I'm going for buying a clothes, I always prefer to visit a store rather than online, because if you buy online, then like could be a chances you won't get the appropriate size, could be a mistakes in the color, so recognizing a color online. So I would prefer that people should just go to in-store rather than
So, do
relying
you
on
think
online.
that shopping, like buying clothes online, can have any advantages uh,
uh
to
yeah,
the? Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I feel like there are advantages, but the thing is, could but like if let's suppose if you need something on an immediate basis, all applications or the online providers get delivered the items uh, within within 2 to 3 business days. So that can't be possible. I mean, the time is also the constraint. But let's suppose you rely on the websites, you had a good experience buying clothes from the certain websites, then you can go for it.
And do you believe that what people wear can affect their mood and feelings?
uh, I would say yes, and I will talk about me on that, because I feel when you look good, you feel confident, and secondly, you improve your presentation, and that have a larger impact when you just appear in a crowd or in a meeting room, that basically stand out yourself among the crowd.
Thank you very much. Now that we're talking about clothes, is there any difference between men and women when choosing clothes?
Definitely. I would say, men just go for the basic fashion. They don't have much variety to explore. On the other hand, women have a lot of varieties and categories to select and try on. And I feel women right now, right now women are usually looking for the clothes which are comfortable, trendy, and easy to carry.
Thank you very much. Now this is the end of the speaking test and we can move on to the feedback part.
Do you want to know what band score you'll get in the IELTS speaking test? Perhaps you want to improve your performance and prepare yourself for the real test? Then why not book an online mock test with us that will last for 25 minutes? 12 minutes of the test itself and 13 minutes of comprehensive feedback, plus we'll give you useful tips on how to make your performance better. So, we know how to help you. Join us.
But before I get started with your score, Pooja, I just want to give you some brief explanation about the structure you applied, your topic development, what exactly you're expected to do in the real test, and then we can talk about your score. So first to talk about the first part. As you know, and as you have the experience with the test, you know that in the first part, the examiner will ask you some short personal questions. You give some short answers to them. But the most important thing here is not to give a one word or one sentence answer. You should always
Mm,
explain about whatever you say. And you did it really well. Actually, your answers were not too short at all. However, you always need to consider the fact that in the first part, even though the answers should be including some explanation, it cannot get too long, like maximum 2 to 3 sentences. That's what you
okay.
need. Like 3 sentences is just perfect in part one. For example, I ask you, do you have a big house? You can simply say, yes, I do. I have a spacious apartment and I sometimes invite family members and friends over to have a meal together. Besides, we tend to watch some movies and we have a lot of fun when we do that. So that's a good answer in part one because first I directly answered the question, then I explained about it, and then I gave the example of the activities we do together, for example. So that's the structure, the general structure you can apply in the first part. And the problem you had was that your answers, just some of your answers in part one, got a bit too long. And you don't
Mm,
actually have time for that in this part. So you just wrap it up more quickly, not in a
okay.
way that's part three. So that's about the first part, but regarding the topic development and like the answers you provided, there was no problem. Your answers are all related to the questions and the explanation had to do with the question itself. Talking about the second part, in part two, Pooja, you should always make sure to talk for the 2 minutes. So never stop talking before the examiner stops you. And you
Mm,
actually did it well. You already had like 5 seconds left when you stopped talking, but then you decided to keep talking. So just do the same thing. If you have already talked about everything and there's nothing else to say, instead of repeating the same ideas, because you had some self-repetition in part two, instead of just giving the same details, maybe you can give more details, something that is not directly asked in the cue card, but has to do with the bullet points themselves.
yeah.
Or you fix your answer a bit. Like, for example, I was asking you to talk about somebody who wears unusual clothes, like unusual to you. You could simply say, maybe, for example, you know how to talk about your character. So you link it to that topic somehow. Maybe you are an extrovert and you enjoy communicating with people, but you say, well, I find the type of clothing my friend wears quite odd, as I tend to be an introvert and I don't interact with people much. And when I see her, I have to do this, this, and that. So you just link it to the main topic somehow. Okay, I'm an introvert, I don't communicate with people. And when I
Mm,
see her, she makes me go out to places where people wear such kind of clothing, and this is not my thing. So you see, this is what you can do in order to have some more ideas and not to repeat yourself, and of course to cover your time in this part. But your answer was related to the question, you covered the bullet points, and you managed to cover your 2 minute time. And talking about the third part, in part three, Pooja, you did well because your explanation was sufficient. In the third part, I can't really tell you how many sentences you should include, but it's normally longer than what it was in part one. So if in part one it's maximum 3 sentences, in part three it should always be longer than 3 sentences. And if the examiner keeps interrupting you to ask you more questions, it's fine. It has nothing to do with your performance. As part three is more like a two-way conversation, and they want to challenge you based on what you showed in part one and two. So that's how it works in the third part. And now that brings us to the first criteria, which is your fluency and coherence. In the first criteria, Pooja, the two things that I already pointed out, the structure you apply and the topic development you have, they will be evaluated in the first criteria. And as I mentioned before, you don't have major problems with those. Just the fact that your answers cannot get too long in part one, how you can avoid those self-repetitions in the second part, and the fact that you should always cover your time. So that was just about these minor details you should have known about in order to even just do a to have a perfect performance in the real test, which I believe you can because now you know how it goes. So that's about the structure and the topic development. However, if you have hesitations, self-repetitions, and self-corrections, you lose mark here. I can say that as you have a good English level and a very good fluency, and of course, you have practiced a lot. I can see that you have been practicing. You don't have major hesitations, like you know how to keep talking. And the very few hesitations you have are mostly content related, like you might even have them in your own language because you were naturally thinking of the next idea you should talk about. And that's not a problem. The language related hesitation is a problem, and you don't have it. You didn't have many self-corrections, just a few self-corrections, especially in the third part. Then you got too fast. So maintain your pace. Because in part one and two, you didn't have this problem, but in part three, it happens. Normally, the candidates warm up. In the third part, they speak more naturally, like their daily conversation. And that's why it happens. So in part three, and generally, just maintain whatever pace you have. Because when you speak too fast, you have more mispronunciations, more self-corrections, and more grammatical mistakes. So that's about it. And the very few self-repetitions, the ones I mentioned, especially in part two, for example, with the word according to or let's suppose, or some ideas that you repeated, you can simply slow down, use some fillers, just buy yourself some time and link it to whatever topic you are good at in a logical way. And now, something very important, like the most important thing that is not allowing you to get a better score, is about the connectives and discourse markers. If you just use the simple connectives, like for example, you just use and, so, but, because, you would not get more than a 5 in your fluency and coherence. So each criteria is about fulfilling all the requirements, and this is the last requirement in this criteria. You actually use the simple connectives, but you also use the word rather than and on the other hand. That was good. But if you want to get a better score, like 7 and more, you should use a range of connectives. A range, it means that you should use them more flexibly, not to overuse them. For example, if you use and 4 times, the 5th time you can use besides. The next time maybe you say and the next time you say plus. Moreover, in addition to that, instead of but you can use however. Instead of so you can use therefore. Instead of because you can use as or since or any other connective that you feel comfortable with because you should be able to use them naturally. If, for example, your general performance is here and then you use connectives which are here, it wouldn't sound natural and you would lose mark. So whatever you are sure you can 100%, you can use them 100% correctly. I don't know, otherwise, although, even though, unless, unlike, whatever, you can use well. So that's about the first criteria. And because of everything I mentioned, you got a 6 in your fluency and coherence, mostly because of those connectives. But you can easily get a 7 Just by adding a few more connectives, you easily get a 7. And now, the better flexibility you have in the connectives and, of course, the little things I said. Slow down, fewer self-repetitions, you're showing a better fluency, and that's how you can get an 8. So a few more connectives, you get a 7, and you do better with your fluency, you get an 8. You can do that. Talking about your lexical resource, your vocabulary. In your vocabulary, Pooja, you got a 7 because actually this is your one of the strong points. You can, if you just manage to answer the questions in the familiar and unfamiliar topics and you generally use some vocabulary in those topics, you get a 6. But if you use just some less common collocations and idioms, you will get a 7. So that's about the first thing. Some, not a range, some less common collocations besides those simple that simple vocabulary used before, and a few idioms. For example, you use some very good collocations like enhance my skills, pursue a career, follow trends, keep up to date, extend yourself on a small scale, come up with an idea, raise fund, casual clothes, run a campaign, or 2 business days. So that's about the collocations. And of course, some idiomatic use of the words like to go for something. That was a good one. Or the third thing, to paraphrase effectively, how you use synonyms. If you're generally using some synonyms, you get a 6. But if you're using these synonyms effectively, you get a 7. And you made good use of the synonyms like enjoy, variety, appealing, appropriate, stand out. So that's the reason why you got a 7. And if you do the same thing, you will get the same score. But make sure to use idioms because you were it was a bit limited. You can memorize 2, 3 common general idioms you can use in different topics. And whatever topic you get, you try to use them by faking your answer a bit. Like over the moon. I'm over the moon. It means I'm happy. Like if I ask you, do you like rainy weather? Maybe you hate rainy weather, but you want to use the idiom. So you say, oh, I do love it when it gets rainy, because it makes me feel over the moon as I tend to hang out with my friends, have a cup of coffee together. So you see, that's how you can use your idioms. You just memorize a few, you apply them. And the more idioms and collocations you use, the higher your score would be. So it's about the range. And about your grammar. In your grammar, you got another 7, but there is something you should be careful about. If you use a mix of simple and complex structures, you get a 6. If you use a range of complex grammatical structures, you get 7 and more. You got 7, but maybe you ask yourself, okay, what are the complex structures I'm expected to use? It's about your speaking and writing. The complex structures, Pooja, are relative clauses. For example, this is the place where I live in, where, which, that. Subordinate clauses, which are 2-clause sentences like when I get home, I wash my hands. Conditional sentences and compound sentences. So what was missing in your performance mostly? Compound sentences. You actually used some conditional sentences. Make sure to use them. I don't know, 0 conditional, first conditional, second conditional. The better range you show, the higher your score would be. How can you make compound sentences? By using better connectives. So if you use better connectives, it can mark you up in your fluency and your grammar. 2 criteria. So that's about the complex structures. The second part is about how you use the tenses. Try not to limit yourself to simple tenses, and you didn't. Like you have no problem with that. For example, you used present perfect, future perfect. That's really good. It's actually, the examiners like to hear present perfect or present perfect continuous. And also passive voice. You also use passive, and it's nice to hear passive. And about the mistakes. As I mentioned before, when you speak too quickly, you make mistakes. For example, but you didn't make frequent mistakes, and that's why you got a 7. If you had made more mistakes, you couldn't have gotten a 7. For example, I enjoy going. I enjoy doing something. Or I enjoy to do something. Go to gym on regular basis, on a regular basis. Spend most of your time. To be present yourself, to present yourself. So it was only about like the word order, some words that shouldn't have been used like that. So it was very few. Be careful. Maintain your pace of speech. And finally, in your pronunciation, you got a 6 because I was like doubtful when you were in the middle of your performance whether you should get a 6 or 7. But then you had more mispronunciations as you went, like as the test went by. So what should you do about that? If you slow down a little bit, you can be
Mm,
more careful about how you're pronouncing the words because very few mispronunciations you can get a 7. You have the potential to do that. But if you have like more than a few mistakes, then that would not be a 7. For example, the word basically, pursue, enjoy, and then idea, which is idea, the word stress. Or you said event, which is event. That's a common mistake. Advantages, you said advantageous. Impact, you said impact. Impact, the first syllable is stress. Or comfortable. Or you didn't say man, you said man. The plural form is men, or woman is women.
yeah.
So that's about it. So, just to wrap up, your overall band score in today's test is a 6.5, but you can easily get a 7 and then mark it up even to a 7.5. It's only about, first of all, now you know the structure, you have no problem. You will be like your performance will be flawless than in the real test. You know everything. And at the same time, always take your time, use the feelers, think about what you want to say, don't get too fast, there is no rush. And use the connectives, don't forget to use idioms, compound sentences, maintain your vocabulary range, and be careful with the pronunciations because that's what it takes. You are doing a great job. You just need to be careful and maintain the range. That's how you can easily get a 7 and then boost it to a 7.5.
Okay.
Now, do you have any questions?
No, like I have watched the many of videos, you guys. It's really good. In one of the time I used the idioms a lot. Like when there was a situation, they asked me about like advantages and disadvantages. So I use it like it's kind of a chicken and egg question to me, and like
Mhm.
those. Yeah, I know, I get it. Like when you use idioms, like it's higher chances of getting 7. And actually in that test, like I was like so much worried, and my according to me my performance was not that good, but I was able to manage 7 that time. But I used
Yeah.
so many connectives and those things in the last part.
Yeah, you see, it's about what you're expected to do and what
Yeah.
you're expected to use in order
True.
to get your target score.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, if you have no other questions or doubts, Pooja, I wish you best of luck with your test. Have a pleasant rest of the day, and I say goodbye to you.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.